Hello and welcome to the Flix Forum podcast, where each episode we go back and we look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. This episode we have Netflix 317th film from 2020. It's the Brazilian Christmas fantasy comedy called Just Another Christmas, or in Portuguese, Tudo Bem no Natal com. It's directed by Roberto Santucci and stars Leandro Hassum, Elisa, Pinheiro, and Danielle Winits. I'm Jesse, I'm your host. Thanks for joining me today for this episode as we're sort of still going through the 2020 films, heading towards Christmas with some more Christmas films. But this one, obviously, if you haven't seen this film and you're interested in checking it out, give us a pause and come back a little bit later on, because we will spoil this as we go. And we kick the show off with the Fast Flicks, where we do a quick little summary of what the film is all about. So this one's about a man who watches his life pass by as he only wakes on Christmas Day, and he has to deal with the year he has missed. I like that. I don't want to say too much too early. We like to try and work out how it ended up on Netflix. International films, often a little bit difficult, but this one was filmed in Rio de Janeiro in December of 2019. The film was released on December the 3rd, 2020 worldwide on Netflix. Within the first month of being released, 26 million households had viewed the movie on Netflix, which is equivalent of about 48.43 million hours. So that seems like quite a lot. The other thing about this film is that this film has actually been remade. Not only just remade, but remade by Netflix in Spanish in Mexico in 2022. And this one's called A Not So Merry Christmas. Can't wait to do this film all over again in another language. So that's what we've got coming up soon. This does have a Netflix connection too. The animated Christmas film Claus is actually playing on the TV in one of the scenes. So Claus, animated film, we have done an episode on. So if you're keen on listening to that one, have a look for it as well. This film, what are the critics and audiences saying? Rotten Tomatoes, there's only 3 reviews, no consensus. 3 of those reviews, 2 are fresh, 1's rotten. The audience, it sits at 81%, so that's fairly positive. That's on more than 100 ratings. IMDb sits at 6.7 out of 10 on 5,500 ratings. And Letterboxd, I'm surprised how many people had actually logged this. Letterboxd, 3.2 out of 5 on 24,500 ratings, and it's been logged by 31,000 people. So pretty impressive numbers there on Letterboxd for this international film. This had a tagline, pretty ordinary. It's imagine waking up and every day is Christmas. I mean, I guess it tells you about the film. Not very clever. What are some of the translations around the world? So obviously in English, it's Just Another Christmas, relating to that idea of Christmas playing over and over again. The original Portuguese title, the original translation in Portuguese is All's Well Next Christmas. Is it? That should have a question mark against it. In Spanish, it's called Christmas Eve is My Sentence. Makes it sound like he's committed some sort of crime. In French, it's And Another Merry Christmas. In German, it's Christmas Again. So all playing on the same things. Greek, Christmas All Over Again. Italian, everything will be normal next Christmas. Norwegian, it'll be sorted by next Christmas. And Polish, they've gone Christmas, and ... Christmas Again. So obviously all playing on that idea that we're saying Christmas multiple times. What are my early thoughts of this one? The first half of this film, and obviously it's that idea of that playing the same thing over and over again. So the first half was a little bit repetitive with the lame jokes, because they don't pay off most of the jokes. But the second half had me in an absolute mess. I'm not embarrassed to say that this is quite an emotional pull in the second half of this film. If only it had sort of as much heart, I guess, in the first half, this would have been an excellent film, because the second half of this film really got me. So let's talk about some characters. Jorge is our main character, and I guess the name spelled Jorge, it's almost like Scrooge. That's who he's meant to be. Christmas is his least favourite day of the year, because he was born on Christmas. So the idea of hating to share his birthday growing up with the Christmas Day idea. He ends up with this year-long amnesia, I guess, and can only remember Christmas each day. And the setup shows him as grumpy, not taking moments with his family seriously, and not enjoying Christmas. But as it progresses, he sort of turns worse, which sort of makes the setup of the character not seem like he deserved what he got, because, his kids love him, his wife's, amazing. And I don't know, it just sort of, it felt a little bit weird, because what we actually saw, yes, he was a bit of an ordinary guy, but not as bad as he became. So a lot more to overcome to try and turn this around. Laura is his wife. She's ever patient. She puts up with this absent husband, but continues to do this as he gets worse and worse as well. And, the idea that they've been gifted her family home, but they have the grandfather living with them, and he's sort of the cause and the effect as to why Jorge sort of becomes trapped in this year-long sort of amnesia. Marcia Marcia, this blonde bimbo who's chasing her sugar daddy, and she's sort of one of the main challenges that Jorge has to overcome. And then we've got the two kids of Laura and Jorge. So Anina, she's the daughter. She brings the emotional punch. Her story is minimal but impactful. And then the son Leo, he's sort of the one that, as a dad, he wants to see himself in him, and he sort of, I think the nice thing with the son Leo is that he doesn't judge his dad for his decisions that we don't get to see on the screen most of the time anyway. The director, Roberto Santucci, 22 directing credits. They all look like they're in Portuguese. Possibly one more Netflix original from 2022 called Fenced In. So we'll probably get to that in a couple of years' time if we do. All right, what are some scenes that stood out? What are some scenes that weren't so good? Good ones to start off with. Jorge, he's being Santa. Doesn't want to be Santa. He's told, you need to be Santa. Get on the roof, pretend you're Santa, and he falls off. That was funny. Jorge has this sort of line of kids with him, sort of lined up, ready to hit him across the head with baseball bats and things to try and fix his memories, and they end up like hitting his ass and his balls and stuff. That was funny. I thought that was humorous. Jorge wakes one year to sort of lift his shirt and see that he's had bypass surgery, and he sort of freaks out, and then he's sort of, have I got all my organs? And his wife Laura says, yeah, minus one testicle. That was funny. I liked that every time Jorge woke up to let us, the idea that to distinguish between whether he was with this Marcia chick or whether he was with Laura, they had a moustache on him. And I thought that was a really good visual cue to sort of tell us of where he was at. The whole video package that Marcia made for him to convince him to stay with her was rubbish. But the conclusion of that, he just like runs off the balcony and jumps to escape her. I thought that was hilarious. Leo, the son, tells his dad Jorge that he was kicked out of college for using drugs, and that he did his time. And as a dad, Jorge just loses it, and wondering if it was someone's bitch, and then he must have been the little spoon. I thought that was quite funny. Laura tries to tell Jorge that she was seeing someone and that she invited them to Christmas, and he's freaking out, and the doorbell goes, and he runs to the door to confront him and punch him in the face, and we find out that it was Luana's, who was one of the families, her latest boyfriend. So that was funny. The montage of the Christmas family trips where Jorge was so happy, they were nice. And funny too, there's a moment where he's like, oh, we're at the Taj Mahal, and it was the Kremlin in Russia. That was funny. And finally, from the moment where Jorge takes his daughter's wig off, and the rest of them all, this was impactful. This really got me. He takes her wig off, didn't realize that she was unwell. The discussion about her not wanting the family to tell him, and her troubles with breast cancer and not being able to breastfeed her young child. I was an emotional wreck, especially them watching Shrek on the couch, and then him waking up with the note and the pills on the bedside table from Laura saying she understood if he wanted to sleep this Christmas. That was just so emotional. I'm even sort of getting a little bit teary just thinking about it. Things that I didn't like in this film. The jokes. I sort of touched on this in the intro, but the jokes they set up as part of the repeated Christmas, that is not funny, which makes them worse every time you see them. You've got the idea that the brother or the brother-in-law asking for money, Jorge being given hot food and hurting his hands, Uncle Victor and his turkey, Osvaldino, the guy asking for donations for the poor, that relative Luana who I mentioned before, who's got that different boyfriend each Christmas. That just wasn't funny. That Osvaldino guy, there's a moment where he brings this birthday cake over for Jorge, and he knocks it in his face, Jorge knocks it in his face. Just lots of unfunny physical humor, jokes about rearranging this cake on his face. It just didn't work. Jorge goes to meet his assistant, Marcia, at a restaurant, and he doesn't know what she looks like, obviously. So, he sits down with this wrong girl, and the big boyfriend steps in, just didn't land. Jorge makes lame jokes about Victor's turkey when he's passed away. That didn't land. And finally, Jorge makes this big deal about them replacing the family dog and not telling him. I don't know, just the physical side of humor that he tried to play off with that didn't work. So what are some themes, ideas that this one's trying to say? I think that obviously time lost doing unimportant things, it can't be recovered, it can't be brought back, and recognizing what's important in life, not taking things for granted, enjoying moments. Life's good, being present in life too, spending time with the family. It's almost the most important thing, especially around that Christmas time, embracing Christmas, what it is, what it means, and that importance of tradition too, but also writing your own story around Christmas too, and your own family story. What did I take away from this one? I like how this breaks that Groundhog Day mold. It's not that everyone is oblivious to the repetition of the same day playing out that we often see in those types of films, and that makes it a lot easier to watch too. And I also completely get the reasons behind not wanting to sit with your kid and watch any kind of Shrek content. That is to me one of the most overrated franchises going around. So I appreciate that, and even though there was a nice touching moment with it towards the end, I totally get it. Questions, ponderings, ideas, thoughts. That idea, how does Jorge break the cycle and end up back with the family? I mean, there's no real explanation for it other than Laura fought for them, and that's it. That's all we get. So I probably would have liked a little bit more, because it was just like this turn that every year he woke up and he's with the family through a montage, but no real actual thing about how he actually broke it. Like, I know it's hard because they're not showing you what happens during the year, but it just would have been nice to have some sort of side note to that. And then the grandfather, who's sitting in that chair in the lounge, the sort of almost corpse-like character. Is he magical? Like, is he meant to be Santa? I don't know. I was intrigued. Like, how does he get his powers? How did he do what he did? I'm not sure. I'm ready to wrap this up. Give the film a rating out of 5. For me, the start, it's a bit of a mess. It's repetitive, and there's lots of bits that don't land. But the back end of this film brings it home with some real heavy emotional punch. I honestly was a babbling mess. It's not a Christmas classic, but it's a clever take on the genre that could have probably still been done better, but I'm still giving it a 3 out of 5. 3 out of 5, solid score for me. We're on socials. We've got Instagram, we've got Facebook and X, formerly known as Twitter. The question I wanted to put out there for this episode is, would having your birthday on Christmas suck? Would it? I mean, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because at least you don't have to organise. You can have all your family there. Probably not your friends, so that's probably an issue. But that idea, and two, especially if you're a young kid, that idea of presents at Christmas is such a big thing, as well as birthday. So you're sort of missing out on a double taking throughout the year. So I guess growing up, it could be quite difficult. We're back next week. Next week, we have another Christmas one from 2020. It's the German comedy called Christmas Crossfire, or Wer Konnen nicht anders. It's directed by Detlev Buck and stars Kotcha Ullman, Ali Newman, and Sasha Alexander Gersak. That's what we've got next week. If you're keen on checking that one out, give it a listen before next week. Otherwise, you might be listening to this at some stage over the Christmas season. As always, thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week.